traps warm air. It is the reason for the exceptionally hot and humid air mass, which began to affect Ontario on Monday, and it has since extended east across Quebec and out to Atlantic Canada. Widespread temperatures above 30 degrees and a humidex value over 40 have been observed already, and these conditions are expected to continue until the ridge weakens and moves away. So not only has it been hot, but it has been incredibly humid or muggy, which makes it a lot harder to cool off. Further to that, the nighttime temperatures are remaining very warm. This exacerbates the heat event because there is limited relief at night. Again, people are not able to cool off for an extended period of time. In good news, though, the above normal temperatures are expected to ease on Friday, with the exception of extreme southern Ontario, where the above normal heat and humidity will linger until late Sunday. But until then, it will be a muggy, hot few days for eastern Canada. Let's take a look at the significance of this event and the impacts. Next slide, please. Such a heat wave has rarely been observed this early in June. It is up there with the worst of the July and August heat waves we've seen over the years. From a meteorological perspective, it is a significant ridge, but impact-wise, that won't really be known until the event is over. The effect of heat on society is often cumulative. The temperature will be most abnormally high today and tomorrow, so Wednesday and Thursday, particularly over southeastern Ontario, southern Quebec, and western New Brunswick. Records may be broken. For example, the forecast today for Montreal is 34 degrees Celsius, and the all-time June record is 35 degrees Celsius, dating back to 1964. Furthermore, a stretch of 3 days with a maximum of 32 degrees before June 20th has only been observed twice since 1875 in Montreal, and that was in 1978 and in 1919. Meanwhile, in Toronto, the longest streak of above 40 humidex was 10 days, and this was dating back to late August, early September of 1953. So these are some records that we're monitoring to see where we stand in relation to past events. Some daily records were broken yesterday, particularly for the highest max temperature, but most interestingly was for the highest minimum temperature across Ontario and Quebec. Extreme heat can affect everyone's health. We need to take care of each other, especially our vulnerable populations. Environment and Climate Change Canada issues heat warnings that contain health messaging developed in collaboration with Health Canada. These warnings were issued leading up to this heat event, and Environment and Climate Change Canada meteorologists continue to monitor the weather 24/7 and update these warnings as the situation evolves. Next slide, please. This is a humid heat wave, so the abundance of moisture makes the atmospheric environment conducive to thunderstorm development. Additionally, here in Canada, we are on the northern fringe of that ridge of high pressure where thunderstorms often do form. So it is strongly recommended to monitor alerts and stay informed about the latest watches and warnings. Just a reminder that a watch is issued when atmospheric conditions are favorable for the development of thunderstorms, while a warning means that severe weather is occurring and to take the appropriate actions. Next slide. So to access the latest weather information, watches, warnings, and advisories, I invite you to download the WeatherCan app. Visit us on our website at canada.ca/weather. Follow us on social media, phone into Hello Weather, or tune in to Weather Radio. I will now pass the microphone to my colleagues at Health Canada to speak to the impacts of this heat event and their recommendations for staying safe. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jen. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Peter Barry, and I'm from Health Canada. So the current extreme heat event that is affecting many people in central and eastern Canada can pose serious risks to health. Extreme heat can affect anyone. However, older adults, infants and young children, and people with chronic illnesses are at greatest risk. This can include people with diabetes, those experiencing mental illness, or those with cardiovascular or lung disease. And people experiencing homelessness and people who work outdoors or exercise in the heat are also at greater risk during extreme heat events. So being prepared for hot weather, being able to identify the symptoms of heat stress, and knowing what to do to cool down are critical steps all people in Canada should know to protect themselves and their loved ones. It's important to recognize the signs of heat illness, such as dizziness or fainting, nausea, headache, unusually rapid breathing and heartbeat, or extreme thirst. And if you have any of these symptoms during extreme heat, move to a cool place and drink liquids right away. And water is best for that. Heat illnesses are mainly caused by overexposure to extreme heat or overexertion. These illnesses can include heat exhaustion, heat fainting, heat edema, which is the swelling of hands, feet, and ankles, heat rash, and heat cramps. And heat illnesses can also lead to long-term health problems or even death. Now, there are three key things that people can do during an extreme heat event. Be informed, so keep up to date with local weather forecasts and alerts, and arrange for regular and frequent check-ins on your family members, neighbors, or friends in case they need help. Get hydrated and stay hydrated. Drink plenty of liquids, again, especially water before you feel thirsty. And stay cool. The most effective ways to protect yourself from extreme heat while indoors are, in addition to staying hydrated, using air conditioning, blocking the sun by closing awnings, curtains, or blinds during the day, using fans, taking cool showers or baths, making meals that don't need to be cooked in the oven, and spending time in a cool place like a community center or a library. And remember to never leave people in your car or pets inside a parked vehicle in summer because it can get dangerously hot very fast. We also need to remember that heat stroke is a medical emergency. So if you witness somebody with complete or partial loss of consciousness, somebody's confused and has a high body temperature or has stopped sweating, call 911 or your local emergency number immediately. And while waiting for help, take measures to cool the person right away by moving them to a cooler place if possible, applying cold water to large areas of the skin or clothing, and fanning the person as much as possible. So ultimately, it's really important that people should continue to follow the advice of local and provincial health authorities on how to protect themselves and others during this heat event, and to understand what resources are available to help them keep cool in their particular area. Thank you. And now I'll pass it on to Jen again for the French presentation.
Et, bonjour à tous. Je m'appelle Jennifer Smith et je suis météorologue nationale de sensibilisation aux alertes à Environnement et Changement climatique Canada. Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de la chaleur persistante de l'Est du Canada. Commençons par le scénario météorologique général. Diapositive suivant, s'il vous plaît. Une crête de haute pression centrée de l'Est de l'Amérique du Nord est responsable de cette vague de chaleur. Cette crête prononcée et presque stationnaire est un phénomène météorologique qui piège l'air chaud. C'est la raison de la masse d'air exceptionnellement chaud et humide. Elle a commencé à affecter l'Ontario lundi et s'est répandue dans l'Est du Québec jusqu'aux provinces atlantiques. On a déjà observé des températures très élevées de plus de 30 degrés et des valeurs humidex supérieures à 40, et ces conditions devraient se poursuivre jusqu'à ce que ce crête s'affaiblisse et s'éloigne. Donc, non seulement il fait chaud, mais il est incroyablement humide, et ce qui le rend beaucoup le plus difficile à se refroidir. De plus, les températures nocturnes restent très chaudes, et ce qui exacerbe l'événement de chaleur parce que le soulagement est limité la nuit. Encore une fois, les gens ne sont pas à une mesure de se rafraîchir pendant une période prolongée. Bonne nouvelle, les températures supérieures à la normale devraient s'atténuer vendredi, à l'exception de l'extrême sud de l'Ontario où la chaleur et l'humidité supérieures à la normale persisteront jusqu'en fin de journée dimanche. Mais d'ici là, il fera chaud et humide pendant quelques jours dans l'Est du Canada. Examinons l'importance de cet événement et ses répercussions. Prochaine diapo, s'il vous plaît. Une telle vague de chaleur a rarement été observée si tôt en juin. Elle est semblable aux pires vagues de chaleur de juillet et août. Du point de vue météorologique, il s'agit d'une crête importante, mais sur les impacts qui ne sera pas connu que lorsque l'événement sera terminé. L'effet de la chaleur sur la société est souvent cumulatif. La température sera la plus anormalement élevée aujourd'hui et demain, mercredi et jeudi, particulièrement dans le sud-est de l'Ontario et le sud du Québec et l'ouest de Nouveau-Brunswick. Il est possible que les records soient battus. Par exemple, les prévisions actuelles pour Montréal sont 34 degrés et le record historique de juin est de 35 degrés en 1964. De plus, entièrement de 3 jours avec un maximum de 32 degrés avant le 20 juin n'a été observé que 2 fois depuis 1875 à Montréal, en 1978 et 1919. Entre-temps, à Toronto, la plus longue période d'humidex égale ou supérieure à 40 était de 10 jours et à la fin d'août 1953. Certains records quotidiennes ont été battus hier pour la température maximale la plus élevée, ainsi que la température minimale la plus élevée en Ontario et au Québec. La chaleur accablante peut affecter la santé de tout le monde. Nous devons prendre soin les uns des autres et en particulier de nos populations vulnérables. Environnement et changement climatique Canada émet des avertissements de chaleur qui contiennent des messages sur la santé élaborés en collaboration avec Santé Canada. Ces avertissements ont été émis avant cet événement de chaleur et les météorologues d'Environnement et Changement climatique Canada continuent de surveiller les conditions météorologiques 24 heures sur 24, 7 jours sur 7 et de mettre à jour ces avertissements à mesure que la situation évolue. Diapositive suivante, s'il vous plaît. Il s'agit d'une vague de chaleur humide. L'abondance de l'humidité rend l'environnement atmosphérique propice au développement d'orages. De plus, ici au Canada, nous sommes sur le bordure nord de la crête où les orages se forment souvent. Il est donc fortement recommandé de surveiller les alertes et de rester informé des dernières veilles et alertes. Un simple rappel que les veilles annoncent les conditions météorologiques propices à des orages, alors qu'une alerte est un message urgent indiquant la présence de temps violents et qu'il faut prendre les mesures appropriées. Diapo suivante. Okay. Pour accéder aux renseignements météorologiques, les alertes ou avertissements, les veilles et les avis, veuillez télécharger l'application MétéoCan. Visitez-nous sur notre site web canada.ca. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux. Téléphonez à Bonjour Météo ou syntonisez votre radio météo. Je vais maintenant céder la parole à mes collègues de Santé Canada qui parleront des répercussions de cette période de chaleur sur la santé et leurs recommandations pour assurer la sécurité. Merci.
Merci, Jennifer. Bonjour, je m'appelle Éric Lavigne de Santé Canada. L'épisode actuel de chaleur accablante qui touche plusieurs personnes dans le centre et l'est du Canada peut présenter de graves risques pour la santé. La chaleur extrême peut affecter tout le monde. Cependant, les personnes âgées, les nourrissons, les jeunes enfants, les personnes atteintes de maladies chroniques sont plus à risque, comme les gens qui souffrent, par exemple, de diabète, qui vivent avec une maladie mentale ou ceux qui souffrent de maladies cardiovasculaires ou pulmonaires. Les personnes en situation d'itinérance et les personnes qui travaillent ou qui font de l'exercice à l'extérieur sont aussi plus à risque lors de périodes de chaleur accablante. Être préparé à la chaleur, être capable d'identifier les symptômes des maladies liées à la chaleur et savoir quoi faire pour se rafraîchir sont des mesures essentielles que tous les gens au Canada devraient prendre pour se protéger et protéger leurs proches. Il est important de reconnaître les signes des maladies liées à la chaleur, comme les étourdissements et l'évanouissement, les nausées, les maux de tête, une respiration et un rythme cardiaque inhabituellement rapide ou la soif extrême. Si vous ressentez l'un de ces symptômes en cas de chaleur extrême, déplacez-vous vers un endroit frais et buvez immédiatement des liquides, l'eau étant la meilleure option. Les maladies liées à la chaleur sont principalement causées par une surexposition à une chaleur extrême ou un surmenage. Ces maladies comprennent l'épuisement dû à la chaleur, les évanouissements liés à la chaleur, l'édème dû à la chaleur, c'est-à-dire le gonflement des mains, des pieds, des chevilles, les éruptions cutanées et les crampes causées par la chaleur. Elles peuvent entraîner des problèmes de santé à long terme ainsi que la mort. Il y a 3 actions clés que vous pouvez faire lors des épisodes de chaleur accablante. Soyez informés, tenez-vous au courant des prévisions et des alertes météorologiques locales et prévoyez des visites régulières et fréquentes des membres de votre famille, de vos voisins ou de vos amis au cas où ils auraient besoin d'aide. Hydratez-vous, buvez beaucoup de liquide, surtout de l'eau avant d'avoir soif. Restez au frais. Le moyen le plus efficace de se protéger contre la chaleur extrême lorsque vous êtes à l'intérieur est de rester hydraté, d'utiliser la climatisation, de bloquer le soleil en fermant les auvents, les rideaux ou les stores pendant la journée, d'utiliser des ventilateurs, de prendre des douches ou des bains frais, de préparer des repas qui n'ont pas besoin d'être cuits au four ou de passer du temps dans un endroit frais comme un centre communautaire ou une bibliothèque. Souvenez-vous de ne jamais laisser les personnes ou les animaux dont vous avez la garde à l'intérieur d'un véhicule stationné pendant l'été. Le coup de chaleur est une urgence médicale. Si vous remarquez une personne qui éprouve une perte de conscience totale ou partielle, une confusion, une température corporelle élevée ou qui ne transpire plus, composez immédiatement le 911 ou votre numéro d'urgence locale. En attendant les secours, prenez des mesures immédiates pour rafraîchir la personne en la déplaçant si possible vers un endroit plus frais, en appliquant de l'eau froide sur de grandes zones de la peau ou des vêtements en évitant la personne autant que possible. Les gens devraient continuer de suivre les conseils des autorités sanitaires locales et provinciales sur la façon de se protéger et de protéger les autres pendant cet épisode de chaleur afin de savoir quelles ressources sont disponibles pour les aider à rester au frais dans leur région. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Jennifer, Peter, and Eric. Please note that the bilingual question period will be led by our 3 presenters and that we will also be joined by Nathan Gillett, research scientist at ECCC, for questions scientifique à SCCC se joindra à nous pour les questions relatives au changement climatique. To ask your question via Zoom, please use the hand-raising function, or by phone, please press star 9. To be called upon, we ask that you make sure your name and your media outlets are clearly identified in your Zoom name. Veuillez utiliser la fonction lever la main si vous avez une question ou sur votre téléphone, veuillez appuyer étoile 9 suivi par étoile 6 pour établir le son. Pour poser une question, nous vous demandons de vous assurer que votre nom et votre média soient clairement identifiés dans votre nom Zoom. So our first question is from Benjamin Shingler, CBC News.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My question. I had a question just about the sort of dynamic, if someone can explain the heat dome, the heat taking place in the eastern part of the country, and at the same time we're seeing some quite cold weather in parts of the west. I was wondering if we could have an explanation of how that works and how that's connected. Thanks.
Absolutely. Great question. Oftentimes when you see a really pronounced ridge of high pressure on the East Coast, like we're seeing right now, there's a complementary deep trough of low pressure on the west. And so as a result, we're seeing some much cooler temperatures being observed. I know some records have actually been broken across parts of Saskatchewan and Alberta last I checked this morning. So it's really just, it's a very high amplitude wave that's passing through the area. And so as a result, we have very dichotomous weather from one side of the country to the other.
So just to follow up, is it fair to say then like the cold on the west is partly contributing to the sort of the heat that's stuck over the east?
Not contributing to, but it is It's just a result of it being a very high amplitude trough ridge pattern that is moving across North America right now. And where you have a ridge of high pressure, underneath you have warmer temperatures. And where you're underneath a low pressure system, it's where you experience cooler temperatures. These patterns of trough ridges move across the country all the time. Just sometimes the amplitude of the trough and ridge is not as pronounced as what we're seeing this week. So the extremes are being presented this week with much colder weather over the west and much warmer over the east.
La prochaine question provient de Diane Tremblay, le Journal de Québec.
Oui, bonjour. J'aimerais poser une question à Madame Smith. Pour la région de Québec, est-ce que vous êtes en mesure de me dire s'il y a des records de chaleur qui ont été battus là, depuis le début de la canicule?
Oui, on avait eu des records battus à Québec, mais on va savoir plus à la fin de l'événement. J'ai quelques notes de choses spécifiques partout au Québec. On avait eu des températures ouais, les températures nocturnes sont intéressantes à Québec. Désolée, j'ai trouvé mes notes avec les choses spécifiques. C'est difficile de dire des petites données en temps réel, mais à Québec, ouais, à barrage à Témiscamingue, on avait eu des températures de 34 le 17 juin. Et aussi quelque chose qu'on a noté, c'est à Québec. On a, oh, désolé, à Montréal, McTavish, on avait eu des températures nocturnes de 22 degrés. C'est très haut pour le mois de juin. Et ça, c'est les données que j'ai maintenant, mais on va avoir plus à la fin de l'événement. Désolée pour pas être plus précis à ce moment. Désolée.
Une sous-question au niveau des records de température là, pour les 3 provinces qui sont concernées par l'épisode de chaleur extrême que nous connaissons actuellement. Est-ce que vous êtes en mesure de dire combien de records de chaleur vont être établis là, un peu partout, là? Est-ce que ça se calcule en dizaines, en centaines? Je ne sais pas. Est-ce qu'il y en a beaucoup, là?
C'est une bonne question. C'est un événement avec beaucoup de facteurs. Ce n'est pas simplement la chaleur. Ça fait une partie de l'histoire. On avait eu des records quotidiens qui est proche de le record, mais pas eu le record pour quelques régions. C'est proche pour beaucoup. En plus, on avait eu beaucoup d'humidité avec cet événement. Donc, c'est unique d'avoir beaucoup de chaleur comme ça, mais aussi beaucoup d'humidité en même temps. Et quand on a beaucoup d'humidité, c'est plus difficile pour l'atmosphère d'être plus haut avec des extrêmes qu'on vu aux prairies, par exemple. Donc, peut-être on va avoir quelques records partout, mais c'était un événement très unique. Désolée, je n'ai pas plus de choses précises à dire. Désolée.
Our next question is from Natalia Goodwin, CBC Ottawa.
Hi. Hi there. My question is about climate change versus weather in terms of what's happening here in Eastern Canada. So obviously we get hot summers in the Ottawa area, but could you speak to, you were mentioning that, you know, this is one of the first times this has happened as early in June. Can you speak to if this is sort of the new reality or the new reality that you're expecting, that these heat troughs will be happening earlier?
That's a great question. I know there's a lot of scientific research being worked on to look at these types of things, but I'm going to defer to Nathan to see if he has any thoughts on any work that he's been doing.
Yes, thanks for the question. Well, we know, of course, that Canada is warming. It's warming in summer everywhere in terms of the observed trend. We also know that the hot extremes are warming across Canada. So the trend is very clear. That warming, of course, is going to lead to a longer period where the temperatures exceed certain thresholds. So yeah, just the general warming is going to mean that there's more exceedances of thresholds in the beginning and the end of the season. So I would say that the influence of climate change on warming is clear. Of course, we do get variability in climate and weather all the time. There have been this kind of event has happened before, but we do expect that the odds or the probability of this kind of event is increasing because of climate change. And that is something that we're doing research on. But yeah, we don't have specific results for this event yet.
Do you have a follow-up, Natalia?
No, I don't. That's okay. I think I'm good. Thank you.
Perfect. So our next question is from Jordan Olmsted, the Canadian Press.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I believe this one's probably for Nathan as well. Wondering if you could give us an update on the status of the rapid attribution research that I know you folks are working on, or other folks in ECCC.
Yes, thanks for the question. So yes, we do have a prototype rapid event attribution system for heat waves. There is, well, as similar to what Jennifer said, we want to wait till the event has finished until we can, analyze the event in its entirety. There is also some delay in getting the data for the event to characterize it, but we can do the analysis once the event has finished in about 7 days. So we're monitoring this event, and we will be carrying out the analysis once the event has finished. And we should have event attribution results for this event. We're aiming to have event attribution results for this event by the end of next week.
A quick follow-up, if I can. Can you speak to the importance of this kind of attribution? And from what I understand, and maybe you can confirm, ECCC is the first national agency to do this kind of rapid attribution?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So understanding climate change impacts on hot extremes is useful to help plan for adaptation. It's helpful to know if this event was made more likely by human-induced climate change, and how much more likely it was made, and that can help us plan for future such events, help us understand how these events are changing and how we can expect them to change in the future. I can't give you a definitive answer to the second question. I know there are other agencies around the world that are working on rapid event attribution. Yeah, as I said already, we do have this prototype system in place now, and we're doing research to develop that system, apply it to cold extremes, apply it to precipitation extremes in the future. Thanks.
Our next question is from Kelsey McEwen, CTV Your Morning.
Hi there. I was wondering if you could let us know how many records have been set in the 6 provinces that are under heat warnings today, if there are records in all 6, and where we could find that information.
That's a great question. The data is in so far for everything up to yesterday. And let me see if I can, I guess I can forward the link to maybe Nicole. You can pass it along as part of the presentation deck, maybe.
Yeah, if you
as a
want to
link.
read it after.
Okay. But there is a climate website that you can go to look at all of the climate normals. I'm just pulling it up here so that I can refer to it properly. But it's the Under the historical climate data, so if you go on the Environment and Climate Change Canada webpage and search for climate information, you'll see there's a link for all of the historical data and climate normals, and in there you'll be able to find all of the records that have occurred recently and for any future use.
Okay, thank you. And my follow-up is, you mentioned that there were notable records set in the daytime highs, but also those overnight minimums. Can you talk specifically about the number in Montreal and if there are other areas that are seeing that overnight minimum record and what that would be?
Oh, sure. I don't know that I have the Montreal record on my fingertips, but I know that their overnight low was around 21.7, I think. And it beats the record by a little bit, but most of southern Quebec saw overnight lows around the 21 or so degree mark, which is pretty warm for June. And that's what makes it significant, because it's very hard to cool off when you don't have when the temperature can't drop and the humidity is very high. So that's what makes it significant is just the inability to cool off at night.
Our next question is from Carrie Slack, APTN News.
Can you hear me? My question is directed, I think, more towards Peter Barry on the health end of things. I know here in Ontario, we have approximately 20 communities who are still under Indigenous communities that are still under boil water advisories. And a lot of your, I want to say, solutions involve drinking water or taking a bath or a shower. What can you suggest for these communities? Because for the most part, a lot of them don't have super health services either. What can you suggest for these communities to help them deal with this?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think a key recommendation for people is to take a wide range of activities to really cool themselves in their homes, but also when they're going out. And that certainly is a challenge, I think, in terms of if there's less access to drinking water. But certainly following the local and provincial and territorial advice that is out there, because there may be resources available and becoming available as the heat event increases. In terms of cooling opportunities in communities where people can, be in cooling centers, or perhaps I know some communities are opening, maybe splash pads or pools and things like that, and providing other types of assistance. So it's really important to stay aware of in your local area what some of the recommendations are for staying safe in the heat.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, do you have a follow-up?
Nope, that's great. Thank you.
Perfect. Donc, notre prochaine question provient de Marie-Lou L. Est-ce que vous pouvez clarifier votre média, s'il vous plaît?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, no.
I think we...
Bonjour. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
OK. Alors, je travaille pour Radio-Canada dans la région d'Ottawa-Gatineau. Ma question serait pour Jennifer. Vous avez mentionné là, que c'était un événement assez rare à cette période-ci de l'année. On a déjà à Ottawa eu une vague de chaleur de 7 jours en juin 2020. Alors, en quoi celle-ci, elle est plus rare? Parce que là, on parle seulement de 4 jours.
Oui, on avait eu un événement en 2020 et aussi un autre en 2018, je pense.
Oui.
On avait eu des vagues de chaleur pendant
de
cette
7 et 10
période.
jours.
Oui, ces événements, je pense que l'un de 2018, c'était proche de le 1er juillet, et l'autre est plus tard en juin. Quand je dis un événement rare en juin, c'est un rare tôt en juin, avant le 20 juin, c'est une date on décidé pour évaluer pour cet événement, mais c'est rare pour le milieu de juin d'avoir des températures hautes comme ça, avec humidité haute comme ça, et pour une longue période. Mais on a des similarités, oui. On avait eu des vagues de chaleur, mais ils ont plus commun en juillet et en août. Et c'est pour cette raison que j'ai noté que cet
OK.
événement est rare en juin.
OK. Non, mais je me demandais en quoi il était aussi rare. Est-ce que c'est simplement la chaleur, l'humidité, ou il y a autre chose qui font en sorte que autre chose dans l'événement qui spécifiquement le rendent plus exceptionnel, si on veut?
Non, c'est comme toujours avec les vagues de chaleur, c'est la longueur, c'est la hauteur de la chaleur, c'est l'humidité. Pour cet événement, l'humidité était un gros facteur, et on voit, on a vu des nuits chaudes. C'était donc ça donne une longue période avec moins de périodes de rafraîchissement pour les hommes, pour les personnes. Désolée. Et ouais, non, c'est pas normal pour cette partie de juin, mais c'est normal pour une vague de chaleur. Ouais.
Puis je sais que vous avez fait une conférence de presse aussi, là, en tout cas Environnement Canada, la semaine dernière ou l'autre d'avant, je me rappelle plus. Et puis vous avez mentionné que l'été serait au-delà des normales de saison. Alors, est-ce qu'on peut s'attendre à ce que des événements comme cette semaine se répètent régulièrement dans l'été? Est-ce que vous avez des prévisions par rapport à ça? Je sais que c'est pas évident de prévoir très à l'avance, mais.
Ouais, ce n'est pas possible de prévoir plus de 5 jours à peu près en avance. Donc, un événement comme ça, une vague de chaleur, c'est un événement météorologique. Donc, on n'est pas capable de donner des prévisions à long terme pour des choses comme ça. Mais si on fait faire une addition de tous les événements pendant l'été, ça donne notre climatologie pour l'été. Donc, on verra. C'est la météo.
Our next question is from Marlo Glass, Ottawa Citizen.
Hello. My question is specific to Ottawa and the National Capital Region. I believe that maybe this might be answered by that link that was mentioned earlier. I'm just wondering if this region is close to hitting or breaking previously set temperature records, either earlier this week or later on in this week.
It'll be something that we're monitoring. We're definitely close. We have, I think, a forecast high for Ottawa today that is, let's see, what do we have? It's currently 32. We have a high of 34 forecast. So generally for the Ottawa-Montreal area, I'd have to look into detail at the exact records, but generally around temperatures of around 35 are the max temperature that we've seen. So that's the record for the region. A lot of them are going to be very close. I don't know if we'll break the record, but we will be very close to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Kayla Hounsel, CBC.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I am a reporter for the National on CBC television, which means that your presentation at the beginning is of no use to me because I could not see you, but I think it's really valuable. And so I'm wondering if you would mind just summarizing for me why this is so significant and why people really need to be paying attention to it. Jennifer, you were talking about it being really muggy, not just hot, nighttime temps, it's very early in June. So if you could just address why is this so significant and important for people to be paying attention to?
Okay, that's a great question. Yes, this heat event is not only a long duration event, it's a multi-day event, but we're also seeing temperatures that are very close to record-breaking temperatures, even if they don't necessarily break the threshold and have a record occur for any particular location. We are very close to that threshold, so it is quite warm. The other thing that we're seeing is a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture with this situation. So it's kind of feels like Florida outside. It's very, very warm. It's very, very muggy. And for this region, that makes it very uncomfortable for people. And the third thing that makes it very tricky is the fact that there is no reprieve at night. All that moisture during the day makes it hard for the temperature to drop off at night, and to see any real reprieve. And so it's making the event longer duration, given that it's not just hot during the day, it's also continuing to be hot through the night. So there's no real reprieve for folks until the ridge moves out and the temperatures start to drop.
And do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure who wants to address this, but how dangerous is this?
I'm going to defer to maybe Peter to speak from a health aspect.
Sure. I mean, this is quite dangerous because we know that these types of events can have very severe impacts on health, illness, and death. I mean, we've seen events in the past where hundreds of people have died from this. You'll recall the heat event in BC in 2021 that were 619 people. Their deaths were linked to that event. We also know that there are particular people in the population that are at significantly higher risk. Older adults, young children, people with chronic diseases, people without homes, people on low income, and these people really can be impacted quite severely by this. Some interesting recent findings from some of the events that we've had in Canada and even internationally, that people with mental illnesses can be quite severely affected by these events. And this can happen very quickly. So it's really important to be prepared, and it's really important to stay aware of the alerts and to take preventative and proactive measures in terms of cooling yourself. Very, very important.
Our next question is from Anand Ramakrishnan. Can you please confirm your media outlet before asking your question?
Hi, sorry, it doesn't say, but I'm CBC as well. Thank you for taking my question. My question also, I suppose, for either Jennifer or Peter. You called the effects cumulative. And picking up on that last point about how dangerous this is, I'm thinking about Statistics Canada today releasing some data on heat deaths and excess mortality, essentially, from these events. What are we to expect if it's happening so early in the season? What did you mean by its cumulative health effects?
Just usually with a heat event, I'll let Peter mostly answer this one, but usually the effects take time to affect people. It takes a little while for people to adjust, and the longer the duration of the event, the greater the chance that more people will be affected by the conditions. But I'll let Peter give the answer to this one.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I mean, it is cumulative in the sense that there is this lag effect for heat, and heat is one of the issues that we actually know most about in terms of some of the health impacts with respect to other types of hazards, and so that's why it's really important for people to be monitoring their health status, and again, these people with chronic illnesses, people with cardiovascular disease, people with respiratory disease, people with mental illness, for example, because this can extend in terms of some of these effects over a few days. And then when you have a long duration event like this, that's very, very intense, you can actually see, again, very severe health outcomes. The other thing from the health perspective, why this is really quite important, Health Canada released a national climate change and health assessment a couple of years ago that actually has a chapter on health impacts of natural hazards related to climate change. And this is it really showed how there are different kinds of hazards that can affect health, and that's where you also see this type of a cumulative effect in terms of heat, perhaps happening with other events as well, which health authorities need to plan for, and individuals need to plan for too.
And just to pick up on that as a follow-up, do you think when it comes to planning like this, I mean, we have wildfire emergency preparedness, we have flood emergency preparedness. What are we doing about the heat? Do we think we need to take it more seriously?
Well, I think, Health Canada is, we're working with our colleagues in Environment Climate Change Canada, but we've also been, since 2008, we've had a heat health program that has been really working to expand heat alert response systems to communities across Canada, to work with local and regional health authorities. So we've developed a guidance about how to do that. Best practices for developing these systems. These are the systems that health authorities use to alert the public, to communicate to the public with the messages that I presented earlier, but also to work with partners in their community on response plans, on opening cooling centers, the kinds of things that we're seeing in this heat event. But also, really quite importantly, how to evaluate whether or not your system is actually effective. And so as we get more severe events in the future, that's going to be really, really important, because they need to be effective. So there are ways that these can be evaluated moving forward. And so we've undertaken developing some of this guidance, but also we have a community of practice. So we're linking a lot of health partners with the newest science, for example, from our national health assessment, that can help them plan, and where they need to make course corrections in terms of some of the measures based on their local circumstances, the things that they're seeing, they can do that with this new science.